This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
So I got to thinking when we were covering the I-70 killer, as opposed to who we previously covered, the I-70 strangler, I have trouble differentiating the types of serial killers when it gets into these, they're almost like spree shootings. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And so I pulled up for today, because we're segueing to something, and as we're segueing, I thought we would do an episode about people who were technically serial killers who used guns.
I feel like without, a gazillion hours of investigative time spent, all of these things, I would know the difference between a spree killer and a serial killer and whatever. It would just be the standard, like, FBI definition of it, right?
Right.
How they defined it. In like the 70s or 80s or whenever they did. And through all the research we do and all the cases we look at, I've drawn a distinction in my mind. And I point it out to myself, and I feel like I sort of annoyingly point it out to you. And I feel like that's part of why, like, this question comes up, right? Because in my mind, serial killers are the rarest of the rare, horrible species, right? I know that it's defined as killing more than two people with definitive breaks in between.
A cooling off period, yeah.
Right. And to me, while sure, I'm not going to argue with the experts of law enforcement who say that. There's more to it than just that, in my mind, for them to be a genuine serial killer.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was going to ask you about today from the perspective of, and I think this is the differentiation for me. One of the first, 20-some years ago books that was handed to me in a criminology class was this book, Sexual Homicide, Patterns and Motives. This is a John Douglas book that was written with Robert Ressler and Ann Burgess. And it's actually that book, more than the book Mindhunter, is the basis for the show Mindhunter on Netflix, Sexual Homicides. And I think where we're crossing over to today, these cases, and technically there's two or three cases that we're going to talk about here, I think they are something different. And I've never quite put my finger on like what they are.
I have my opinion of what they are. And we can talk about that if you want. And I'm not saying I'm right. It's just how I classify it in my mind.
Okay, well, I'll start with this guy, Jared Powell, and maybe you can incorporate it into like a conversation about him. In December, so back at the Christmas holiday, I had gotten several notifications that there was an arrest in Los Angeles where, in my mind, this is sort of a spree killing, but that's not, necessarily like I'm not set in stone on that. But the way that the different news outlets covered this was they talked about him like he was a serial killer. This is 4 Los Angeles area homicides that take place over 4 days. And in my mind, that's almost a spree. Here's how the ABC News covered it. They said 4 fatal shootings that occurred in the Los Angeles area this week, including the unprovoked killings of 3 men who were experiencing homelessness, have been linked to one suspect. The suspect has been identified as Jared Joseph Powell, 33. He was arrested in the killings of the 3 unhoused men who were shot while sleeping alone on a sidewalk or an alley in Los Angeles. And that's according to the police report. Powell was already in custody for another homicide that occurred in Los Angeles County this week involving a follow-home robbery. We'll get to that in a second. The serial killing spanned 4 days from Sunday to Wednesday. The suspect was taken into custody in connection with the robbery homicide on Thursday. This is according to the police press release that ABC News is incorporating into this article. And they had a picture in here where, like, Los Angeles Police Department were looking for someone that had been captured on home surveillance. It's a really terribly grainy picture. It's just a guy and looks like almost like a tracksuit with sunglasses on at night. I don't know if that's 100% accurate. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass at a press briefing said 24 hours ago, we announced there was a killer on the loose, and now he is in custody. Jared Powell's vehicle was at the scene of all 3 homicides of the unhoused men, and a handgun recovered from that vehicle was positively identified as the murder weapon. That's according to Los Angeles Police Chief Michelle Moore. The vehicle and the handgun had been linked to this home robbery shooting. In the shootings of the unhoused men, the first victim was a 37-year-old man. He was killed at about 3 a.m. on Sunday. And this press release, for people who want to look anything up about this, this all comes out December 1st and December 2nd of 2023. So the first shooting is 3 a.m. on Sunday before that. The second victim was a 62-year-old man who was attacked at about 4:55 a.m. on Monday. And the third was a 52-year-old man who was killed around 2:30 a.m. on Wednesday. Motive in the shootings has not been established. And Chief Moore says in this press release, in the press briefing, that the men were murdered without provocation. Moore said, I'm highly suspicious of that. He did not believe that the suspect started killing on Sunday. And he responds by saying he's highly suspicious of that. I don't see how, when you look at the sequence of accounts in 4 days, 4 individuals are brutally murdered and the manner in which they occurred. I'm highly suspicious that this did not just start Sunday morning, less than a week ago. Moore said it's possible that Jared Powell may have committed robberies, as demonstrated with the San Dimas murder, may have committed another crime outside of the Los Angeles region, since he showed a willingness to allegedly travel as far as San Dimas, which is a pretty great distance from downtown Los Angeles. The home robbery shootings occurred on Tuesday. Powell is accused of following the victim from a charging station in West Covina to the victim's home in San Dimas. That victim was 42-year-old Nicholas Cimbalin. He died from his injuries. He was a father of 2 who worked for the Los Angeles County Executive Office as a project manager in IT. Detectives identified a vehicle of interest from surveillance footage in that case, a 2024 gray BMW, which was entered into law enforcement database as a wanted, armed, and dangerous Bolo. An automatic license plate reader system was used to flag the suspect's whereabouts, and he was arrested following a traffic stop in Beverly Hills Wednesday night. He was booked on Thursday for the robbery and the murder in San Dimas, and he was held on a $2.1 million bail. This is interesting to me because this is a different kind of serial killing or spree. Did you dig into this guy at all, Jared Powell?
I did, but I didn't find anything. But I did it back when it came out and we first talked about it. So there may be something out now if you found something. I didn't know.
Well, I haven't found a whole lot. His court cases are coming up, so he's pleading not guilty to this stuff. One of the things I found was interesting out of the Santa Monica Daily Press a couple of days after this news briefing on December 2nd is the title of it. It's an Associated Press wire piece they ran with. It says, man charged with 4 murders had a $700,000 settlement from Santa Monica. So allegedly, did you hear about this?
I remember this. Okay.
So Jared Powell was laying in a ditch on a beach in Santa Monica, and he was run over by a city maintenance vehicle. And the city council settled with him in June of 2023 for $700,000. So that's where the fancy car comes in.
I was going to say that explains the BMW.
Yep. It's a brand new. It's a really nice car. But yeah, this guy, I don't know what's going on there. I guess maybe what we're going to see is he tries to I don't know, maybe claim I hate to say it this way, but maybe claim there's some kind of like TBI or head injury. I don't know.
Oh, I doubt we ever hear anything from him.
You think he'll just plea it out?
They linked it based on ballistics, is my understanding, and then they had the circumstance with regard to the car, right?
Yeah.
And they were able to put the car at the scene of each of the 3 shootings that initially happened, and then they're able to get it close to the one where the man was followed home.
Yeah. Now, that's an interesting type of killing. When you follow someone home, there's something about those type killings that always bothers me. That's pretty ballsy. Now,
Well, he saw him at a charging station.
right.
And so something, right?
Something clicked. Yeah. I don't know what it is going to be.
Something made him follow that guy as opposed to somebody else or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, is this a serial killer? Well, sure. I mean, by the definition of what a serial killer is, yes, this man is a serial killer. I believe it's the mayor says that she doesn't believe that it's possible he started on Sunday, right?
Yeah, the mayor and the police chief make comments to
Okay.
that effect. Yeah.
Well, and to me, there is a possibility that it started on Sunday. It's also possible he killed before. But if it started the Sunday prior, you're going to want to figure out what circumstance in his life changed that made him end up being in this sort of weird position.
Yeah.
He is charged with robbery, along with his other crimes, right?
Yeah.
A couple of things come into my mind. So he's using a gun, and one day it'll probably be very clear to investigators that, like, true serial killers never use guns. Okay? Like, as their main weapon of choice.
Yeah. Like, I can see it as a secondary, but I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, they use them for, like, to show force or to gain control, but they don't use it as, because serial killers want to strangle people.
Or stab, or something more intimate. Is that where you're headed with that?
Anybody can pull the trigger on a gun. It does not satisfy a true serial killer's need to kill. Okay.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. And so this guy shot all of his victims that are mentioned here, right?
Yeah.
And so we have the extra information that he got a large settlement. Not very, like in the summer before this happened in December, right? Or at the end of the year, I guess in November. So it was just months before, right?
Right.
So he comes into money. Now, granted, he was run over while laying in a ditch. Okay. I don't know for certain that if he was laying in a ditch, is it possible he had been experiencing homelessness and that these weren't as random attacks as we think?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that the Los Angeles Times put together an interesting profile in the days after this press conference. This is credited to Ruben Vivas, Noah Goldberg, and Richard Whitten for the Los Angeles Times on December the 10th. And it just says The Twisted Path of Jared Powell. This article, it's not super long. It doesn't give us a lot of new information, but it had some interesting stuff I wanted to run by you. It says, in the days after Thanksgiving, authorities say that Jared Joseph Powell was cruising around Los Angeles in a $60,000 BMW shooting homeless people, striking 3 times in a 4-day span. The first to die was 37-year-old Jose Bolanos, who was sleeping on a couch in an alley in Vermont Vista around 3 a.m. November the 26th. 24 hours later, 62-year-old Mark Diggs was shot as he pushed a shopping cart in the Arts District. Then on November the 29th, 52-year-old Sean Alvarez was gunned down in Lincoln Heights. Powell was taken into custody after a traffic stop in Beverly Hills the same day that Alvarez was killed. His car was linked to a follow-home robbery from November the 26th, in which Nicholas Cimbalin, that's the earlier guy, was shot and killed after he pulled into the garage of his San Dimas home. More than a week later, much remains wrapped in mystery, including a motive in the slayings. A review of Powell's life highlights a bunch of contradictions. A popular athlete in high school who later held down a job helping at-risk youth, he was someone with a lengthy criminal record, mostly low-level infractions, although he was convicted of a stabbing in San Bernardino. And a man who received a $700,000 settlement from the city of Santa Monica in a lawsuit from April of 2020. So that's interesting, like right there. Now, they talked to a woman named Kelly Bain. So Kelly Bain says that when she and Powell began dating in 2013, there was nothing amiss in his behavior. The two had gone to high school together in San Bernardino. They reconnected years later, and he was a consummate boyfriend, according to Kelly. He was kind and respectful. She even introduced him to her family, which was rare. In a phone interview with LA Times, she said he didn't have any red flags. He was doing everything a good boyfriend does. She said during that time, he worked in Compton helping at-risk youths. And according to the Transparent California Public Salary Database, Jared Powell was working as a gang interventionist. It's unclear exactly what he did, and city officials did not provide any additional information upon a query. Kelly Bain said that their connection to helping those in need brought them closer together. Now, in April of 2016, weeks before they were set to move into an apartment in San Bernardino, Kelly Bain says that Powell assaulted her in the streets near Yorba Linda. The Anaheim Police Department said that Powell was arrested and booked on suspicion of domestic violence after officers responded to a call at Imperial Highway and Santa Ana Canyon Road, which is just off the 91 freeway in Anaheim Hills. And Kelly Bain says that it was a total 180 for his behavior, but she said that Jared Powell apologized profusely. Now, she declined to press charges at the time because he had never harmed her before, and she was pregnant with her child, and she didn't want to send him to jail. The following month, they moved in together, and it seemed to Kelly that things were moving in the right direction. But days after he proposes to her, his demeanor changes. He started acting erratically and sometimes violently. She said that he suddenly became a heavy drinker and smoked marijuana. I'm guessing if you go back in time to 2016, that's going to be where he gets into doing something.
Possibly. But keep in mind his long time. So he's 33 and 24. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And so he's going to be, because he had been with the person, his girlfriend,
For
since high
3
school.
years. Well, they got back together.
Okay, but she had known him, I guess.
Correct.
Okay, and so she says his behavior went in a 180-degree direction, right?
Yeah.
And so, I have to wonder, so if that was in 16, that'd be 7. He's about 25, is that right?
Yeah, that seems right.
Okay, so about 25. So that's a little young for any sort of midlife crisis or anything. But I presume that we haven't gotten all the way through it yet, but I presume he didn't, and they're not together now, right?
No, they're not together anymore.
Okay. And so not anybody in this situation that I heard what you just said, I would say more than likely that either they suffered from a mental health challenge to begin with, right? Or that, it could straight up just be that he had an alcohol problem, because she says he was a heavy drinker, right?
She said he became a heavy drinker and he was smoking marijuana.
Right. And the other thing is, I always wonder, because those are, well, not really marijuana, but like if you're drinking to get drunk, if you're a heavy drinker and you have an issue, you're numbing something, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And I feel like that could lead to other types of drugs as far as like trying to feel better or trying to numb whatever issue is happening. And, some drugs make people madder than others.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. The different chemicals affect like different people in ways that like we can't necessarily predict. But I was pointing out that like sometimes one of the things they tell you to watch out for after someone has committed a pretty heinous crime can be that they turn to drinking, change their appearance. They might start using drugs then.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible, but it could also be the other way around, which is the chicken and the egg situation, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, it goes further. She says that he began physically abusing her again, and the last straw for her came in June, and I believe this is 2016. She says that Jared Powell became convinced she was cheating on him. She was 2 months pregnant, and she said Powell punched her dozens of times, including in the stomach, and it caused her to miscarry. She said that Powell threatened her that if she told anyone about the abuse, her quote is, it was part of his fear tactic. He'd say, if you go to your family or go to the police, I'll get off. My mom is affiliated with law enforcement and I'll get off and then I'll kill you and your family. Public records show that his mother was a security officer for the city of Palmdale at the time. They contacted her from the LA Times, but she declined to comment. After Kelly's miscarriage, she ended the relationship and she moved out. She said she reported the June assault to the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and the County District Attorney's Office, but no charges were ever filed. Court documents show that in August of 2016, she filed for a restraining order against Jared Powell, but his legal run-ins don't end there. So he's been a defendant in several criminal cases, and he's been a plaintiff in a number of lawsuits. Powell sued a property manager in 2020 after he moved out of an apartment building. He alleged that the manager had been sexually harassing him, and he suffered emotional distress at this West LA building, and he asked for $3.75 million. The property manager said he was always nervous. He was always on the alarm. He was always trying to find an issue everywhere. The property manager requested anonymity here to discuss the legal matters, but he added that Jared Powell owed thousands of dollars in rent when he left. And they kind of end that with a quote from the property manager saying, I was never trying to escalate the situation. But the manager did say that when he spoke to Powell on the phone while the case was pending, Powell admitted that he was filing lawsuits to make money. In 2022, that lawsuit for $3.75 million gets dismissed. And then at the same time that is sort of going on, Powell had sued the city of Santa Monica, alleging that a beach patrol officer had run him over with a city maintenance vehicle while he was lying on the sand early one morning in 2019. In June of 2023, the city agreed to pay Powell $700,000 to settle that case. And they dug a little deeper here, not much more, but a little deeper. They said that even with that windfall, Powell still had debts. He owes around $30,000 in medical bills for failure to pay to Museum Center Surgery Group, even though he said in a contract that he would save money from the legal settlements to pay off that debt. The Los Angeles Police Department has started reaching out to other agencies in the region to see whether Powell might have been connected to other killings. LAPD Captain Kelly Muniz says, we're not aware of any additional cases related to the suspect other than the four discussed at the press conference. So this guy's interesting.
Well, he's demonstrating some what appears to come off like paranoia or anxiety, according to the anonymous property manager, right?
Yeah.
Additionally, I don't know if he actually admitted that he was suing just to make money or not, but if that were to be the case, and, he does go on to do that, it looks like. So those are the acts of a desperate person, right?
Yeah.
If you have anxiety or paranoia, again, often common side effects of certain drugs, right?
Yeah.
And then he did have a windfall of money.
He did, and that's a pretty big windfall.
It is, but he didn't pay his debt. That is part of that case, I presume. And he didn't, I'm thinking there's probably not a lot of money left.
Oh, no, I think he probably ran through it.
Right. And so, like, how, if it were drugs or some sort of substance, he could have gotten a whole lot of it. Right. Also, it doesn't seem likely that he would have been robbing people, except maybe he was.
Yeah, it's weird that he's robbing people, though, isn't it?
Not if he ran through the money and he is a drug addict. It would be weird that he's robbing homeless people. My thought on this type of guy, he could just be an asshole killer. Okay. He kind of sounds like he has some sort of, well, there's no question, according to his girlfriend, if everything she says is even slightly true, he was a bully, right?
Yeah.
And he was a domestic abuser, at least in that situation. And so, you don't get into a relationship and think to yourself, I'm going to boss this person around and be a bully and punch them until they miscarry my child. Like, there's something psychologically going on with a person who does something like that, right? That is way deeper than just not getting along with their significant other, right?
Right.
And so that to me indicates, an emotional or mental health issue that's not being dealt with. The other thing is, I think it can be really hard in your 20s and possibly your 30s to seek the mental health treatment you might need. Because, if you're younger, your parents kind of do it. But as you get older, you sort of have to admit that you have an issue. And that can be really hard for people, especially when you're in a situation where I have to believe that there's nobody that wants to beat up their significant other, without other things
Right.
coming into play. And so
Right.
if he could say I have this issue, right? I don't know because that's a mental health thing. When you find yourself wailing on your girlfriend, that is an issue that without further professional intervention, it's going to continue more than likely. And it's some sort of rage. Okay. And even though he may have done a really good job of controlling it, it still spilled over, right? Because he's in the situation where his girlfriend ultimately leaves him. Well, we don't have any information about his personal relationships leading up to the end of 2023 when he goes on this shooting spree. But I would guess that it hasn't gone well for him personally. And he may have never found a coping mechanism to get all that rage out. And this was him doing that. Now, why did he target these people? My guess would be because they're there. It literally could have been anyone, unless there is some sort of connection, which who knows? But and so is he a bad dude? Well, yeah, I think he is, but there's always a reason somebody's a bad dude. And there's absolutely no telling what caused the damage that festered to this.
Yeah, this is interesting from the perspective of, you called him, an asshole killer versus a serial killer. I find that fascinating, and I think that you're onto something there. I've looked at different sprees over the years where, and we kind of talked about a little bit these murders of the homeless. In the last episode, we were talking about some of the different strings that occurred in the 70s and the 80s. Well, we're at an all-time high, and I think the numbers that I had were 2021 or 2022. I want to say there were 85 homeless people murdered in Los Angeles in 2021. And that's a population that's increasing. And when you've got cases like this, they are fascinating, but I do think, I don't want to say the secret here or the solution here is certain people getting help, but it kind of feels like what it is.
On which side of it?
Like somehow people who are in a situation of like Jared Powell, where he's like sort of admittedly, we haven't verified this, but he's sort of admittedly moved into this phase of his life where he's getting income from lawsuits to some degree. We don't know how. There's a lot of different lawsuits in here with his name on them. I can't see the outcomes of all of them. That's sort of a weird way to go.
It's desperation.
Yeah.
For whatever, I mean, if you're suing people like because you're trying to get money, it's desperation, and it's going to fall apart. That's not a sustainable way. A realization of that could have occurred, right? But again, this, from the very little information we have, this goes all the way back to whenever he did the 180 on his girlfriend and like what was happening then, right?
Yeah.
You can have, when your expectations in life start to not be met, which 25, 26, even 33, which I believe is how old he was at the time of his arrest at the end of 2023. That's about the time that young adults start to realize how life really works.
Yeah.
And it can be, because, it said that he worked with troubled youth, right?
Right.
So he had this innate desire to help the community. I feel like that would be sort of that would be a requirement for somebody that worked in that type of field, right?
Yeah.
You'd want to help the community. Well, in helping troubled youth, there is a lot of, I hate to say it this way, but you're going to fail a lot of times just because of the nature of the beast of what you're doing. And if you're like, I'm going to help, I want to do everything I can to help these kids that, they just need a chance. And when you put your all into it and you realize like it didn't really matter that you put your all into it, that can be really hard. And it can cause disillusionment. And if he became disillusioned at that point and he was unable to cope, because it all starts with just a little drop before, it just spews out of control as far as like the anger or the being out of control aspect of it. Now, is somebody that's driving around shooting, 3 homeless men and then following someone home and shooting him in his garage, is that person out of control or are they really in control? Right? Because they didn't go firing into a crowd, right? But they still took the steps to do the crimes that they did.
Do you think this is the same kind of mentality that like would be headed in the direction of potentially being like a mass shooter or something?
I think that it could be, but probably not, because I feel like he wouldn't feel like he could dominate the situation in a mass shooting. That's why because he's going on, except for the guy who was driving home, which I don't know anything about that guy. And I don't know exactly what that is. It is weird that he switched gears, right?
Yeah, I thought it was too.
But, homeless people are, in terms of murder victims, and if you are a psychopathic murderer who is trying to, get a thrill from killing someone, homeless people should not do that for you. Okay. They are like the most vulnerable population with regard to not being able to shield themselves from exterior violence. Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's not a huge, and I'm not trying, and I'm not saying anything bad about homeless people. I'm just saying like that it's like people that kill little kids, right? Like you haven't accomplished anything, right?
Yeah.
And so while I don't encourage killers to seek accomplishments, going after a vulnerable population doesn't really make sense, but it does fulfill the need for an easy target, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're targeting rage as opposed to seeking a kill, that I feel like is when you have targets you have victims that end up, you're going, what is happening here, right? Because there was nothing about, shooting somebody who has nowhere to go and is on the street to begin with. There's nothing about that says like, oh yeah, I'm a successful murderer, right?
Right.
And so there's got to be something there. And granted, these are rare crimes. Now, the way we've sort of presented this, it seems like that's not true, right? Because we've sort of overwhelmed ourselves with all these homeless murders, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a rare thing that occurs. Now, in the sense that from what we know, this guy did not know any of these people, right? The other cases we were talking about, that was unclear, right? But, homeless communities have conflict just like any other community. And those types of, altercations that end with somebody dying, that's a different situation, right? Even if it's a fight and somebody, if it's a fight with one of the 3 original motives for murder, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. And so we're not seeing any of that here. However, I would say, revenge is the product of anger, right? And as far as the original motives go. And so I would say in some way, shape, or form, he's getting revenge on something in these killings, even if it's just on himself. But he's doing it in a way like that really doesn't make sense to anybody else.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what's going to happen with Jared Powell. He's pleading not guilty. So there's
I have a feeling as it moves forward.
That may change.
Well, I think so. There's a lot of evidence here. And the other thing that I thought for just a second, and I'm conflicted on whether I should say it or not, but I feel like somebody that could sue as a form of income may just as easily kill to go to prison.
Well, I did. So, and I didn't bring all these sources in today. I was just bringing up the couple that we used. I did read that he had been homeless and trying to get off the streets at different times, which is why I kind of, let you run with what you were saying there. I think you're right. I think there could be more. I don't have like a verification of that sitting in front of me, but I read that at one point.
It would make sense to me if he had issues, and as far as like being homeless, because that was who he targeted first, right?
Yeah.
And then because he was killing that, for all we know, he could have thought he was putting them out of their misery, right?
Could be.
We know that he followed the man from
the charging station.
And we don't know if there was interaction. We don't know if he saw something in that man that reminded him of himself.
Right.
We don't know if there were car seats in the car or, we don't know. But there was something that caught his attention and made him go after that guy, right?
Right.
And so I have a feeling ultimately it's not going to be like an excuse to get him out of this. But I think he's going to have a mental health issue, and it's going to be something very deep seated he never dealt with, or he's going to have been out of his mind because of some sort of substance, right? Out of his mind to the extent that he was driving around killing people.
Right.
Like, but still, he's not crazy. He's just acting erratically, right? Because I feel like, what he did during that 4-day period is pretty much the definition of erratic, right?
It really is. I mean, it's as far as I'm concerned, this guy falls into spree killing land, and like I don't understand the follow home robbery situation. I don't really understand. I view the murders of homeless people with sort of the same disdain that you do, which is it's sort of it like I think you looking at it from the perspective of like
Easy targets.
yeah, I think the exact words you used were like killing children. I don't know how you get into this situation where you follow home one guy in the middle of this spree where you're focused on these pretty easy targets. It's really upsetting to me. I don't have a lot more on Jared Powell, but I noticed something. You have anything else on him?
Go ahead. What did you notice?
Well, they keep talking about this other murder that like I followed. So first of all, I did follow these Anaheim murders, and I thought they had all been solved, but they were essentially.
Are you talking about potential other murders for this guy?
Well, I just realized while we're talking that they were in 2016, and they were the murders of homeless people, but they were stabbings. And
I see.
I did pull up; they had a suspect in that. I thought they did, and that's why it kind of fell off my list.
I would just point out how quickly he got caught here.
Yeah,
and to me, that is, because we're talking about like he was arrested on charges related to one of them, like within just days of all of them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not dealing with a rocket scientist here, right?
Correct.
And that's another thing to me that is pretty much. I guess there could be exceptions to it, especially if they're at the end of their journey and they want to get caught. But like serial killers they take a whole lot more effort to not get caught. And I don't feel like mass shooters or spree killers do that as much. We do see a little bit of it occasionally, especially like a mass killer who then tries to blend in with the crowd or whatever.
Yeah. In my head, I'm thinking about the DC sniper case, how random that was. They put what I was going to say that I noticed in the course of all this. They keep talking about another set of murders in Orange County, California. Also a serial killer. Suspected serial killer, I guess I should say. The number of things that like are going on in that guy's life were very interesting. But he gets tagged in every one of these early Jared Powell articles. That's why I was asking if you had a lot more about Jared, because we can still talk about him as we talk about this other dude. But I wanted to switch over to him. Have you heard of Itzcoatl Ocampo?
Yes.
Okay. So Itzcoatl Museo Ocampo, he comes up at the bottom of all these articles because he was from Yorba Linda, California. So Itzcoatl went by Izzy, Izzzy, which is similar to another person from that time period. He ends up getting in a lot of trouble. He gets arrested in January of 2012. But Itzcoatl is interesting to me, and he's different than Jared Powell. Itzcoatl Ocampo, he was born in 1988 in Mexico City. He was the oldest brother in a family of 3 children, and his family immigrated into the U.S. and into Yorba Linda, California. His dad was a lawyer in Mexico, but he couldn't be one in the U.S., so he became a vacuum repairman, and they rented an apartment out. They lived here for 12 years or so, and they went through all the legal procedures to become American citizens. Ocampo attended Esperanza High School, which is down in Anaheim. It's another Southern California place. And he graduated in 2006. Now, he was a little guy, and I don't know, I've looked up trying to figure out his height, but he apparently was very, very small, like 5'2", 5'3". When the September 11th attacks happened, he goes from being this friendly, approachable dude that does well in school. He's very popular among his his peer groups, he ends up getting very interested in politics. And when he leaves high school in 2006, he enlists in the United States Marine Corps. And he served at Camp Pendleton, which is in Oceanside, California. He was originally attached to the 15th Regiment of the Medical and Sanitation Battalion. And in 2008, he gets deployed to Iraq. He's attached to the Combat Logistics Regiment 15 there. But he's not like in combat. He's mainly a truck driver who takes water and fuel around. He spends 8 months in Iraq and gets a bunch of awards. And I did notice that on his military records, he has an Article 15, and he got an NJP, which is a non-judicial punishment. From what I can tell, it's for he had a standoff with an Iraqi soldier that was in the same unit, and that was assigned to the same area. I don't have all the paperwork on this. It just says that like they didn't feel like it needed to go to courts martial. But he does get a non-judicial punishment, or NJP, and he gets demoted back down to a private first class. He loses his pay, and he ends up on extra duty, which included KP, and that's like kitchen duty, not the good kind. You're not cooking, you're cleaning everything up. And he ended up filling sandbags. So he comes back to the U.S. and he gets sent over to Camp Pendleton. And while he's at Camp Pendleton, he suffers a head trauma when the latch on his MTV-R, which is his medium-duty tactical vehicle, fails to lock. And the door, these big heavy doors they have, it swings back out and it hits him in the head. They put him under medical. And they do a couple of different tests, and they realize that like he's probably not going to be the best person to continue being a Marine. So he's found not qualified for work, and he's shipped out of the Marines. He's booted out of the Marines, and he starts looking for work in Southern California. He has a lot of issues going on. His mom gets a divorce from his father. His father was so miserable over having been a lawyer in Mexico and didn't feel like he was living up to things here that he ends up having a drug problem. And mom finally leaves and takes younger kids with her to go stay with some relatives. Now, during this time, he ends up working as a landscaper, as Skotal does. And in July 2010, somehow he manages to get an honorable discharge. He comes back to Yorba Linda in California. And not long after he comes back, he begins to show signs of possible post-traumatic stress. And he starts acting weird to the point that he's written up for exhibiting deviant behavior. So while he had been home, his close friend, they reference him online as being a guy named Patino. I don't know exactly how they're friends or how they know each other or if they were in the Marines together or what. But Patino dies while fighting in Helmand Province on June 22nd of 2010. Following that death, Skotal becomes depressed. He starts to complain about suffering from headaches. He appears to have hand tremor issues, and he starts drinking a lot. Over the next 2 years, between June of 2010 and 2012, he is not able to adapt. It's very similar to what you were talking about with Jared Powell.
It's very similar to what a lot of people go through.
Right.
It's just the outcome that's different.
You're right. From what I found online, he was not keeping a job. He was taking menial labor jobs, and he wasn't able to keep them. He was depending on his relatives to pay for things. He would get some treatment from the VA, but he wasn't paying attention to the medications they were telling him to use. He wasn't coming for therapy. His personal opinion according to, I think, his father, was that he didn't want to go back to the VA and talk about the PTSD because he had not been in combat. He had been with the combat logistics unit.
Right. So he had enough wherewithal to at least try to, like, I haven't done enough to deserve to have PTSD.
Right. It was like a mixture of pride and denial, I think he had going on. But by the end of 2011, people noted that Escudel had deteriorated significantly to the point that, like, he was described as being a hypochondriac, meaning he thought he had multiple diseases and ailments. It was also said that he showed signs of having delirium. Now, this is according to a press release put out a little later on after some events we're going to talk about by his lawyer.
Now, I don't feel like, so hypochondria, I get it. Everybody has a little bit of it at some point in time in life. But delirium is a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's not elaborated on anywhere that I can see. Delirium is delirium is a pretty specific thing. And I don't think it's one of those things that people should throw around as sort of a fad word, like a zeitgeist kind of word.
No, it's got to be pretty serious. And like you said, I mean, it's not elaborated on, but it's mentioned. And, to the extent that it's relevant, that's interesting, right? Because that, to me, it indicates that, there might be a little more to that head injury, right?
Well, that's what I was thinking. And so the only person I've ever known with delirium, their delirium came when they were trying to get off a substance. They used a very specific substance. And I've seen it in person. It is wild. And at first you don't believe it's happening. Like if you've never seen it before.
Well, right, because they're delirious.
Right. The stuff they're saying is largely nonsense, and it doesn't match. It can even not match what you're just doing with this person. It apparently is an incredibly major problem for Escudel Izzy Ocampo. On October 25th of 2011, he goes to the home of Eder Herrera. And Eder Herrera is a former classmate of Escudel's. He's 24, lives with his mom, who is 53, Raquel Estrada, and his older brother, 34-year-old Juan Estrada. They were all home. In the middle of this little visit that Escudel is having with Eder Herrera, he lunges at the other people in the room. He stabs Raquel and Juan 30 and 60 times, respectively. This is not a crime that occurs in secret. It is seen by multiple eyewitnesses. They provide police with a description of who did this. And because Escudel and Eder Herrera were similar in appearance, Eder Herrera gets arrested.
I believe that the neighbors actually thought it was him.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like, I feel like that was like a pretty genuine case of mistaken identity because there had been some conflict. And
right. They had been observing this family fighting, so they assumed it was him.
So the friend he went to go see, after Izzy killed the brother and the mother, right?
Right.
His friend gets arrested for it because of eyewitness accounts indicating a man that happens to look like both of them.
So that's October 25th. Now,
that's a whole lot different than I don't have enough information to say, because, it's like classmate, not best friend, right? And so I don't know, but to me, those are more personalized murders, right?
It's definitely something. It is a murder that defies a lot of what I can comprehend about violent acts.
My instinct on that is I feel like it was less unprompted than it reads.
Yeah, I think there may have been something there where, and I'm not saying he falls into the same Jared Powell asshole murderer, but I think this type of situation where you like brutally stab two people to death is because they said something that you did not know how to.
It hit you the wrong way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm just saying.
Oh no, yeah, he's still responsible for it. It's just, I would say it was like a snapped type thing. They probably didn't even, like, it was probably like, what the heck is happening, while it was happening, because it was so surprising.
Yeah, so this happens in October 2011. This is the first known event we have where Escoto Ocampo is killing someone. And then on the evening of December 21st, so about 2 months later, he's in this shopping center and he attacks a homeless man named James McGillivray. He stabs him to death. Now, this time it gets caught on surveillance cameras. So the police release a sketch of basically Escoto. Like it's one of those sketch artist recreations, but it's from the video.
Composite, right?
It's a composite. A week later, he kills a guy named Lloyd Middow, who went by Jim, who lived under a bridge at the Santa Ana River crossing in Anaheim. And again, it's multiple times that he's stabbed with a knife, like upwards of 30 times. 2 days after that. So, we got the last week of the year, he kills 2 people. Then he goes to Yorba Linda and he kills Paulus Smith, who's 57 years old. He stabs him more than 60 times and he dumps his body into the parking lot of the public library in Yorba Linda. By the time this murder occurs, the news is like the media is covering this, similar to Jared Powell. But these murders don't happen like boom, boom, boom in the course of a week. They happen over the course of 2 months. In early January 2012, there are multiple articles about the killings. And they interview a guy named John Barry, who's a 64-year-old Vietnam vet. And he talks shit about Escoto. He urges any potential victims to be as careful as they can in order to avoid being the next victim. And Escoto travels to Anaheim and starts to stalk Barry so that he can kill him. Barry notifies the police on January the 12th after noticing that Escoto is nearby.
But they didn't have his name, right?
No.
Okay.
They just have somebody who matches the composite. So,
and he was calling out whoever it was.
Right.
Okay.
So the police get with John Barry and they say, look, we want you to move into the homeless shelter just for the time being. He says, no, that's not my thing. And the following night, on January the 13th, Escoto finds Barry in Anaheim and he attacks and stabs him in front of dozens of witnesses. And then he flees on foot. After he kills him, the witnesses break up into groups. Some people are running away, but a couple of them run Escoto down and call the police. So Escoto gets arrested and he's trying to get rid of, he's trying to change his clothing. And the police are able to stop him from getting rid of the evidence. And when they search him, they find that he has a stainless steel knife on him with a 7-inch long blade. So they take him to the police station and they charge him with killing John Barry based on all these witnesses and the fact that he's covered in Barry's blood and the fact that he has a murder weapon on him. When they keep investigating him, they find that the murder weapon matches the other killings of the 3 other homeless guys. Escoto Ocampo, he is officially charged with 4 murders. And there's another press conference. The Orange County District Attorney at the time, Tony Rackauckas, he comes out and says he's seeking the death penalty against Escoto Ocampo. And on February 4, 2012, so less than a month after this, they're analyzing blood stains from his clothing and his shoes. And they realize that Escoto Ocampo has the blood of Raquel Estrada and Juan Herrera on his shoes. So he gets charged with that double murder. And finally, Eder Herrera is released. He's been sitting there since October. The lawyer tells the judge in this case, after Escoto comes out and like they're trying to like get a plea deal and get some pretrial stuff going, the lawyer says, this guy can't help me. He says Escoto is not well. He's like, and I think the way that he described him as being psychotic, but he said, like, even trying to have a basic conversation with him, this guy's not there. They try and they move to either have him declared mentally incompetent or to have him declared unfit to stand trial. His trial gets scheduled to begin on January 17th of 2014. And it's not looking good for Escoto. But on the evening of November 27th, 2013, so a couple months ahead of the trial, Escoto swallows multiple packets of Ajax cleaning detergent that he had been stocking up while he was in the jail. And he's rushed to the hospital. And then he's pronounced dead the next day. I don't know what kind of ending you want to call that, but anticlimactic comes to mind.
It seems so weird that Ajax could kill you, but I guess enough of it, right?
Well, I mean, it's enough of anything potentially can kill you.
So he was clearly, whether it was a traumatic brain injury or a mental health crisis, there were things happening to this guy, right?
Yeah, definitely.
He, it kind of takes a lot for an attorney to be like, this guy can't, he's not there, right? When you're trying to mount a defense in a case. And so it feels like, 30 to 60 knife stabs, that's a rage-filled attack, right?
Yeah. It's way different than the shootings, though, right?
1,000,000% different. It's from, think about having to stab somebody. Because if somebody was like, you need to go stab somebody 60 times, all I could think about is like how much work that would be, right? That would be a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work.
Okay. And so it's, again, in this, what we were talking about here, it actually spells out how he formed his ideals and reached towards them only to have them crumble beneath him and become disillusioned to the point that it didn't appear that he could find his footing, right?
Yeah.
This is a very common story. It happens to everybody. It's just your ability, your resilience, I guess. As far as because most people don't have this type of outcome, but it becomes he couldn't cope. And when you can't cope and things keep piling on, it's entirely possible that it was a physical injury in this case, because there is documentation that he had the heavy door fall on him, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that could be like a physical problem that caused an actual physical injury to the brain that was disrupting his ability to cognitively process things. It's also possible that he suffered a break, because now we don't have all the information. It's hard for me to imagine somebody killing of an acquaintance's mom and brother in a hacking stab sort of way, because I presumed his friend was home, but I'm not really sure.
Well, I pulled an article on that because I had more questions. You want to hear a little bit about that situation?
Well, sure. But all I'm getting at is it seems like because there's not a gun that's going to immediately put somebody out of commission, something could be done while one or the other is being stabbed. But that's sort of what I'm getting at. But go ahead.
So this article comes from the Los Angeles Times. It's February 7th of 2012. And so it would have been after Escudal's arrest. And what it says is police seized multiple cell phones, family photographs, a lotto ticket, and sorrowful writings from a Yorba Linda home where a mother and her older son were found dead October 25th. Escudal Ocampo was accused of murdering 4 homeless men. He was charged on Monday with the fatal stabbings of Raquel Estrada and Juan Herrera. Estrada's son, Eder Herrera, was originally facing the murder charges, but was released Friday after prosecutors discovered a DNA link between evidence collected from Ocampo's home and the Yorba Linda crime scene. That night at 11:29 p.m., officers responded to a 911 call coming from a payphone about a mile away. According to the affidavit, the caller was a male who spoke in a low volume, and he said that there were loud noises coming from the Yorba Linda home. The man hung up abruptly. When officers arrived, they found a large amount of blood at the threshold of the front door. There were drag marks leading into the home. An officer walked around the home and into the backyard, and looking through a window into the kitchen, he immediately saw a female, later identified as Raquel Estrada, 53, lying on her back with multiple puncture wounds to her chest. There was a bloody steak knife that was located approximately 3 feet from her head. Another officer entered the home from a sliding glass door and found Juan Herrera on his stomach with several puncture wounds to his back. Police noticed that there were large amounts of blood throughout the house. On the kitchen table, police saw a black ski mask, black hat, a wallet, and sunglasses. The writings that were found in Eder Herrera's bedroom during a search conducted October the 26th, or the following day. The police also collected his tax return, a fitness membership card, and various other items, including a white towel, kitchen knives, and a CVS receipt, cameras, and computers. The search warrant also asked for information from a Sprint cell phone number obtained from a rental application for the home in Eder Herrera's name. So they give us a little bit of a glimpse of what they did there. And then there was another one that talks about the search for Escudal's home. And it's kind of the same rundown. They seize a bunch of dark clothing, and they end up pulling DNA from him. I don't know what was happening here with this guy.
Do you think he's the one that called 911, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. What I had envisioned is different. Sounds like he had an issue, more than likely with his friend who I guess wasn't there, right? And having gone to the home, whatever escalated, but perhaps one or the other was asleep, it seems like. And so that's how... Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Like he encountered the mom and then like he killed her. And in the meantime, the older brother gets up and is like, what's going on? Right. And so that happens. And so there's an element of surprise there, but then he feels bad enough about it that he calls 911.
Right.
Okay. So that is almost certainly to me either the physical brain injury or like having a mental break.
Yeah, I found something that addresses that briefly. This is about a month later. It's a March 9th, 2012 LA Times blurb. It's not an article. It just says, a former Marine accused of brutally murdering middle-aged homeless men in Orange County, as well as the mother and brother of a high school friend, was ordered to be returned to court in September to stand trial. Escudal Ocampo, who was indicted last month for this string of killings, appeared in court Friday with a welt on his forehead, an injury that his attorney said he suffered when he banged his head against a toilet or a bench in his jail cell. Ocampo's family wept when the 23-year-old was brought into the courtroom. So this guy's 23 years old. They later told the defense attorney, Randall Longworth, that they were concerned about his declining weight. And the same attorney said his client had been behaving erratically and complaining that he hears voices. He said that his client is suffering from visible tics and headaches. But Deputy District Attorney Susan Price has said that the erratic behavior is not unusual for a person facing such serious charges and the possible death penalty. She said the claims about his behavior could be related to the defense that his attorney intends to mount. She said he's a very intelligent man who acted very rationally during the course of these killings. Along with, said that Ocampo is definitely suffering from some type of mental illness, and he said, I think his diagnosis is going to be extensive. So they do that. They order him to come back to court in 2012, and he ends up getting a 2014 trial date, but of course he never makes it. So.
I just want to clarify. In response to what his defense attorney said with regard to seeking assistance with whatever's going on there, she said that he acted rationally during the murders that he committed.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah, that's what the deputy district attorney says. I've read a lot about him over the years. There's lots of long form articles out there where people talk about him and sort of talk about what was going on with him. I don't have any explanation for these two guys. These two guys are among the more baffling. I think you hit it on the head. I still think they're sort of baffling crimes.
I would say that it makes sense to me. I mean, because clearly you can't say that someone is acting rational when they've murdered somebody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that doesn't make any sense. And I would say, it is a tough thing because people can fake being mentally ill. There are elements that, at least as they're laid out here, they seem to indicate there might have been something real here happening. Now, if not, then if he legitimately did not have a physical injury or a mental health crisis happening, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
So either way, the cherry on top of this would be that he committed suicide, which to me furthers the mental health crisis or the traumatic brain injury side of it, as opposed to the asshole, because assholes rarely kill themselves.
I'm with you on that. I am with you on that. I don't know how this all works. And I have one last thing to add here that I found was interesting. So this is from an April 28th, 2015 CBS News article. So we started this off with Jared Powell and his City of Santa Monica thing.
Yes.
All right. So this says, the city of Brea will pay $700,000 to a man who was arrested in the 2011 killings of his mother and his brother, but was freed when his high school friend confessed to the crimes. The city agreed to pay Eder Herrera, 27, and put an end to his federal lawsuit against the police. I was kind of hoping they would say sorry, said Herrera in a phone interview. I'm just grateful to have closure and finish this case. Herrera alleged he was wrongly jailed for 3 months after his 53-year-old mother and 34-year-old brother were stabbed to death in their home. He was released in 2012 after authorities said they found evidence linking the friend, suspected serial killer Escodal Ocampo, to the killings. $700,000.
Well, I mean, honestly, so I have a feeling they had the DNA profile from the mask.
Yeah.
At the scene, and that's how they linked it. And I don't know. I mean, obviously they were wrong and they settled it. Sounds like because they were wrong, right? And I wouldn't be expecting an apology, but it sounded like there was no ill intention in what ended up happening if he did in fact look like his acquaintance, right? There was a logical progression that occurred there that made them think it was him. He's fortunate that his friend was caught.
Well,
because
yeah.
Otherwise he would have been convicted of that.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I just thought that was interesting that they both Jared Powell and then Eder Herrera, in two different positions, like, because, Eder Herrera did not commit that crime, but now we got Jared Powell, that they both had $700,000 settlements.
Oh, yeah. That seems to be like a sort of a magic number with the payouts there.
Unless he's got an insurance cap.
Yeah, probably. Honestly, probably because now Jared Powell's didn't. His was like a beach patrol situation where he said he got run
Oh, I
over.
know. It's just a number. Like it was the number that made me think that. But I agree. Yeah, you're right. They're different.
Do you think that Itzcoatl Ocampo is a serial killer or was a serial killer? Sorry.
In my head, I would still file him under mass murderer.
Not spree.
It's too. I think Jared Powell is a spree killer, unless they find something else in his life from back in 2016 or 17. I don't think Escoto Campo. I don't think he's a serial killer. I mean, he sort of fits like a lot of the things that you think of, but he's definitely not like a sexual homicide killer, which is what I started talking about at the beginning of this. He's more like a mass murderer.
Well, and see, to me, a mass murderer is like all at once.
I would agree with that.
So that's why I have my whole asshole killer thing, but I'm not even sure he's an asshole killer.
Well,
I think that it's possible either I feel like that I can confidently say this. Something broke in this guy, okay? Whether it was the physical or the mental, something broke. I would say that that's true in most people that murder someone. At least temporarily, something broke. And so in the event something broke, I would need some more information, but, this might be one of those situations where he might have actually been the definition of insanity, like as required to have no idea what's going on. I kind of doubt it because he did call 911, right? Because that's not somebody standing there holding the knife going, wait, what happened? Why am I in trouble for this? Which would be, legally insane.
Yeah.
But if it's not something to do with that, and if he was legitimately faking it to the extent like the prosecutor puts forth, right, in the rational behavior explanation, then I would say he's definitely an asshole killer because he was able to put up this front. Now, I'm not saying that a prosecutor wouldn't just say that, because it certainly makes sense to me that every single person that comes before them having murdered people, which I don't really think that there was a question here that he killed people, right, in a very vicious manner. And without the benefit of hindsight and all the other information, it seems like you're looking at a very vicious serial killer, right?
Yep.
And it's only through sort of time and space and looking at all the different elements that you can say, well, yeah, he wasn't like plotting it, right? Maybe he was, maybe I'm wrong. But to me, I have some pity for him, which isn't something I have very often, except to the extent you would pity anybody that would be like, I want to be a murderer, right? Because that's dumb and sad at the same time.
I just was curious what you thought of like the definitions of serial killers and how these type situations fit into them. You got anything else on Escoto or on Jared Powell?
No, I'm going to follow. So Escoto's dead. He committed suicide, and I'm interested to see if we get anything out of Powell. I'm pretty sure my instinct is that this will just be something that gets pled to, and we don't ever have any idea of anything that happened. And he'll just be in, life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Thank you so much for listening today. We'll see you next time.
All right, so I'm going to tell you guys a few things about some of the folks who are helping sponsor our show. Now, Labrati Creations sponsors our show, and you can always use the Crime XS code there. You can also just message them at Labrati Creations, and they will generally do something for the people who come from True Crime XS. They were our very first sponsor. They've done a lot for the show, and that code is CrimeXS at LabratiCreations.com. The first new advertisers that we have, and I've selected all of these guys. I've selected all of these advertisers. So the very first one is Cure. Now, I'm going to tell you guys about this, about Cure as being one of our sponsors. If you're an athlete, you know that proper hydration is key to peak performance, but plain water can be boring and sports drinks can be filled with artificial ingredients and added sugars. That's why we love Cure. It's a clean and effective way to stay hydrated and perform at your best. I use it late in the day when I switch out of caffeine mode. Specifically, when I hit the pool or I go play tennis with my wife, I use Cure to help me stay hydrated. It helps me recover after a long day. Now, you guys may not know this, but I build things. And right now, I've been building several structures on our property out here. Among those is a new podcast studio space for myself. I do a lot of that work at night and into the wee hours, and I always have some Cure with me to go into my aluminum water bottle. Hydration is not just about filling up my aluminum bottle with water. Cure Hydration is an oral rehydration solution that contains the perfect balance of electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb water and rehydrate quickly. Whether I'm building things or putting the podcast together or chasing these dogs that you sometimes hear in my studio up and down the trails to get them worn out, Cure Hydration is the way that I choose to go. Cure Hydration is an oral rehydration solution, or an ORS, that contains the perfect balance of electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb water and to rehydrate quickly. The formula is made with all natural ingredients like coconut water powder and pink Himalayan salt. It's free from artificial flavors, from sweeteners, and preservatives. Cure Hydration is vegan, gluten-free, and non-GMO, making it a great option for anyone with dietary restrictions or preferences. The packets are convenient and easy to use. You just mix them with your water and you drink. They're perfect for on the go. They're perfect for travel. And anytime you need a quick and effective hydration boost, ready to combat dehydration, then you try Cure today and feel the difference for yourself. You can use code TrueCrimeXS for 20% off your order. That's TrueCrimeXS. I have a link that I'm putting in the most recent episode show notes, and True Crime XS will get you 20% off. Our second sponsor for the show today is Laird. Now, Laird has a list of things that they want me to tell you about. They have better ingredients with amazing taste and functional benefits. They have a superfood creamer crafted from the highest quality, all-natural, real food ingredients. All Laird products are sustainably sourced and thoroughly tested to ensure that you're incorporating the cleanest, finest fuel into your routine. They have all natural whole food ingredients, and they contain naturally occurring MCTs made from coconut oil. There's no artificial flavors, there's no colors or additives, and there's no sugar from highly refined corn syrup. They want me to talk about my love of coffee, but the truth is, I don't do much with coffee. But let me tell you someone who does. My wife has to have a cup of coffee every day. Now, I've fallen off recently, but one of the big things that I've done since the beginning of our relationship is she used to go and get a Starbucks every morning. I have substituted that out by always trying to make her coffee. It's not going to be every single day of time from when I met her, but for the most part, almost every day, I make her coffee. I put her creamers together, and I make sure that she has a good way to start her day. So with Laird, he started experimenting with his morning ritual almost 2 decades ago. He found that when he started adding fats to his morning cup, like coconut oil, he had amazing energy throughout the rest of his day. He gradually perfected this recipe for an epic cup of fuel, and he began sharing it with his friends in the surf community. I'm an ocean guy, so I saw this item and I was like, okay, we're going to try this one out. Are you ready to feel more energized, more focused, and supported? Go to lairdsuperfood.com and add nourishing plant-based foods to fuel you from sunrise to sunset. And you can use our promo code at checkout to save 15% off your purchase today. Our offer code for this for Laird is going to be True Crime XS. Pretty much everywhere except for Love Body Creations. If you use True Crime XS, that will get you, at Laird, it'll get you 15% off. At some of the other places, they'll get you 20% off. I'm going to tell you about two more sponsors today. So the first one is, the third one is Liquid IV. So let's talk about the real reasons that you need to hydrate. Late night TV binging, back-to-back Zoom meetings, going on a walk with your friends. Everyday hydration is not just for high-energy athletic endeavors. Liquid IV is the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. It's now available in sugar-free. This is years in the making, but Hydration Multiplier Sugar-Free uses a proprietary zero-sugar hydration solution with no artificial sweeteners. It's got 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, but it's also got 8 vitamins and nutrients for everyday wellness. Liquid IV hydrates 2 times faster than water alone. Keep your daily routine exciting with 3 new flavors. They've got white peach, green grape, and lemon lime. I love all of these flavors, but I think that my favorite is probably the green grape. White peach I use as the secondary flavor, and lemon lime I leave here for my kids and my wife. Liquid IV believes that equitable access to clean and abundant water is the foundation of a healthier world. They also partner with leading organizations to fund and foster innovative solutions that help communities protect both their water and their futures. To date, Liquid IV has donated over 39 million servings in 50 plus countries around the world. You can get 20% off when you grab your Liquid IV Hydration Multiplier Sugar-Free or any other variant at liquidiv.com and use code TrueCrimeXS at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code TrueCrimeXS at liquidiv.com. And the last sponsor I want to tell you about is Zencastr. We are part of Zencastr's creative network. We've been using Zencastr since about midway into our first season. Meg and I experimented with a lot of different ways to put the podcast together. And the truth is, Zencastr was an integral ingredient to us being able to bring you this show. It's so easy. It's now super easy. You can record a podcast with Zencastr. You can log in using your browser and you start recording a high quality podcast right away. You can record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guest. You get to feel a sense of zen knowing that Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you will always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. You sound your best. I mean, if you've ever worried about what you sound like, Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recordings. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. You can set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. That's how you don't hear my dogs every second of every episode. Zencastr is all in one. If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are now over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place, and you can distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code TrueCrimeXS, and you're going to get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. You can also check out the other plans they have available. I want you to have the same easy experiences that I do for all my podcasting and content needs. So zencastr.com/pricing. The offer code is TrueCrimeXS, and it's time for you to share your story today. We are also adding New Era
as a sponsor for the show. New Era Cap is a headwear and apparel brand founded in 1920 in Buffalo, New York. Now, I actually have some experience with New Era caps. My dad and I have been through multiple iterations of baseball caps through the years. We collect different styles, different eras, and then my teenager has started his own cap collection and has several new eras as the centerpieces. Our favorite teams may not be the same, but our outfits are all topped with the same new era ball caps. We love the quality and the ability to wear what the players are wearing. Not to mention, New Era is the leading headwear manufacturer with quality licensed products. You can support your favorite college or pro team in style from the official headwear provider for the MLB, NFL, and NBA. You can get a stylish accessory for your everyday ensemble and support True Crime XS. Just shop the official headwear and get 15% off when you go to neweracap.com. That's neweracap.com/truecrimexs. You can also use the code truecrimexs at checkout. That's it. That's all you have to do. And that's 15% off your order using the promo code truecrimexs.